Has anyone ever given a nice guy a chance after they've thrown a tantrum because you didn't let them treat you like a queen? And if you did, how did it work out? Story 1. I dated a guy in high school. Relationship was okay, but it was long distance, so we amicably ended it. He was the one that brought it up, and I agreed. Fast forward 6 months, and he randomly messages me. Everything is friendly until I mention that I have a new boyfriend. The conversation did a quick 180 from "Hi, how are you?" to "You'll never find someone like me," and "How could I start dating again so soon?" I blocked his butt real fast. And he was right. I never did find another guy like him because I married the new boyfriend and we're still together 18 years later. "You'll never find someone like me." Yeah, that's the point. Yeah, that's definitely the best comeback to that. I've had this situation too. Dated a guy for a few months. From the beginning, though, it was just embarrassing. We had mutual friends, and he would spend full outings, parties, weekend trips, voicing his disbelief I would date him. Telling people how lucky he was in a self-deprecating manner that was gross, that he has won the lottery, and I was out of his league. No matter how many times I asked him to quit, as he did it every single time we were in public. It got so bad that his best friend actually snapped and told him in the middle of a self-deprecating rant how embarrassing it was, and to look at how uncomfortable he was making me. That started a huge argument about, "But she's a queen, I'm just treating her like one." When I had the audacity to agree with his best friend, full cry meltdown. In front of everyone. To the point where people left a paid weekend early because he made everyone so absolutely uncomfortable. Broke up with him that weekend. The breakup lasted for hours with me begging him to get the hell out of my house while he cried and cried and cried about how he treats me so well. How could I do this to him? Then it turned to rage. Had to block him on anything and everything when I started dating someone months later. A lot of friends blocked him as well when they found out he was stalking me, parking outside my home for hours, etc. I was naive and dumb. Looking back, I wish I had been aware enough to recognize emotional manipulation. If you're dating someone and they act like you're doing them a favor, don't date that person. It almost seems hard to believe that being overly nice or doing something that seems overly complimentary is actually emotional manipulation. But if you think about it, they're just trying to instill in that person kind of how good you might have someone that would be so subservient to you in that way. It also, the fact that it turned into rage was just such a 180. Ugh, it just gets out of control. Story 2. It was my first experience on OkCupid. The guy seemed okay on paper. We swapped non-nude pictures, so none of us would be surprised with the way we looked. We talked on Skype for 2 weeks, because at the time I was in campus town and scrolling OkCupid for my hometown. I told him I would be back home after finals and that it would take 2 to 3 weeks before we could meet in person. It was good to talk to someone who wasn't outright trying to spicify or fetishize me. I don't remember the convos, but I thought it was good enough to meet him in person. Anyways, so we meet. I got dressed up, and he was in t-shirt and cargo pants. I bought us both a latte. It was a coffee date. We sat down, and he talked mostly about himself and his job. At some point, he stood up, walked behind me, and started giving me a shoulder rub while I was seated. I never asked for a massage, and why would I accept one in public? I got bored, so I protected his family supper to leave, and he was like, "Oh, too bad. I could have brought you home." And I thought I told him already it wasn't going to happen so soon. Then he blocked me. Oof, that sounds so awkward. The shoulder massage made me cringe so hard. Just had a guy I had only talked with for a short time flip out since I was honest with him about me not wanting to rush into anything. Got the same spiel about how all women are the same. He also accused me of lying about being single. I didn't want to waste his time, so that's why I was upfront with him about how I felt. Thought he'd appreciate the honesty. I had a guy flip out and swear at me over text literally on my way to meet up with him because I wouldn't agree to be his girlfriend before I actually met him in person. At least it saved me from what I'm sure would have been a really awful date. Oh, wow. Sorry, that sucks, but where the hell do these goblins come from with this stuff? I mean, that is absolutely crazy. No, literally trying to get her to agree to be your girlfriend before the first date? That's some kind of power play right there. Just trying to get some kind of relationship locked down before the first date? No, that's bad. Learn some patience, dude. Learn some self-control. Story 3. I was celebrating my last day in a city I had lived in for 4 years and had invited a bunch of friends out for a night on the town. And one of these friends was a self-proclaimed chauvinist who insisted to walk on the outside of the sidewalk. So I thought it was uncomfortable that he kept switching to the outside, and I didn't feel I wanted the treatment. There are no horse carriages that splash poop on people anymore. I don't need a walking feces shield, thanks. But he basically ignored my lack of comfort with that and continued to explain that it's his duty to do that. He ended up eventually full out yelling at me, and I cried and left. That was my own night to hang with people before departing. Anyways, we loosely stayed Facebook friends just because I feel like he's a litmus test to the crazy stuff the internet is doing to the opinions of people, and I'd like to keep a tab on how bad things are getting. The end. Edit. I'm not shutting down the act of walking on the outside. It can be cultural and varies contextually between individuals. In this case, it ranged from non-consenting force to directly disrespectful and abusive. It's all about the how, y'all. Ugh. I remember walking around with a friend one night in our city a long time ago. We were both 20-ish. I was walking on the street side of the sidewalk. A random guy stopped us and lectured my friend on treating ladies right, which apparently included us switching places on the sidewalk. People and their weird, outdated ideas. Sorry, but you don't seem to understand how important it is that he walk on the street side. In real life, if a woman is walking street side with a man, then she is available, and that man is her pimp. He was trying to save you a lot of embarrassment. By the way, except that I've actually heard people say that before. Loving how in either instance, I'm still the property in some way. I've heard that story too, a lot of times, that thing on the outside, being the pimp or being available. I've traveled to a few countries, not all of them. That's never the case. It's never been the case, no. I just don't get that. I think that's just some sort of tale. Have you ever heard of that? Is that true anywhere? I have to look this up after this. Story 4. I was once in a similar situation. I dated a sweet guy, but honestly, sweet is subjective. He was a gentleman, but he insisted on always opening the car door for me. He literally would not let me touch the car handle, like at all, letting me eat first always, instead of both at the same time, because honestly, it's not a biggie for me. Commented that I should never cut my hair, etc. I feel like I was with a man from the 50s. It was draining to be treated like a queen instead of an equal. Other than that, he was okay. Anyways, when I broke up with him, I felt like he didn't want to let me go. Like I had to explain over and over again that I wasn't feeling it and that he deserved someone that would feel the same way about him. He hung up the phone with, "You don't know what you missed out on." Okay, I guess. My first boyfriend visibly sulked if I ever opened the door for him, or even opened my own door. When I finally got him to tell me why, it was that he thought I was publicly showing everyone that I was making him my shrew. If I had any dating experience, I would have seen what a huge red flag that was. I ended up losing my summer job because he just started showing up every day, and my supervisors thought I was miserable and inviting him. When I told him I needed space, he left more than 30 messages on my cell and so many voicemails on my digital answering machine that it broke. This is when it was a brand new thing and they couldn't handle much. Then, later that same morning, he showed up at my gynecologist appointment. Wow, it actually sounds so much worse when I see it written down. I know I shouldn't laugh at your misfortunes of being with an insane person, but your answering machine physically breaking is just hilarious. Lord, I cannot handle this person. I'm out. Story 5. My ex had a friendzone guy in the classic sense of the word. She knew he liked her, basically abused him to buy her food and clothes and stuff. He sort of seemed to expect her to come around and like him someday. He had very little social skills and didn't look after his appearance. I met my ex in second year of my uni. She introduced me to her best friend, who was the most quintessential neckbeard-looking guy, though admittedly he grew a thick beard all over his face, but never trimmed it. Long story short, he had been her flatmate in halls and they developed a friendship, which was her stringing him along and him buying her stuff. She would take him for friend dates at least once a fortnight. He bought her crazy expensive gifts, designer clothes, handbags, perfumes. I was always uncomfortable with her abusing him, but, the guy was so cringeworthy it hurt. This is how bad it was. At a party once, we missed the last train. She called him at 4 a.m., and he drove over to the other side of the city just to give us a lift back to my flat. The whole relationship, she seemed fine with me, but we broke up on graduation, mostly amicably due to us moving to different cities. So friendzone guy lands a massive job and is paid like £90,000 as a graduate in some software thing. All of a sudden, she comes round on him. She made an Instagram post about how she finally fell for her best friend. This is a sad story, but it kinda sounds like they both knew what they wanted all along. Holy hell. I feel so bad for him. Story 6. I'll clarify. I am married. I've been married for 20 years. I get a whole slew of messages on social media from time to time from random people wanting to talk to me. Normally, I'm pretty cordial. I'm very upfront about being married. Even then, I don't mind a random chit-chat. Once I let them know I'm married, that's when I'm called a hussy or a party girl. I also get this same sentence. Curse you. You really missed out. I would have treated you like a queen. So my question is, to anyone who knows, if you've dated a guy who acted like this, how did it turn out? How dare you be loyal and married for 20 years, you absolute hussy. But seriously, I don't understand those guys at all, right? Me neither. That's why I found myself in the depths of this site. Now, if I can learn how to ask better formatted questions, life would be grand. It's probably here somewhere. A lot of dudes online don't want to just talk. They reach out in hopes to make a connection. Once you respond, that gets their gears turning. Oh, I've got a response. How far can I take it? Once they realize you aren't going to be unfaithful to your spouse, they get offended and insult you because that's all they can do. If you want to make friends or have genuine conversation, that should be just fine to do. But some people are just going to be buttholes because they aren't getting what they want. Do you think part of it might be the availability of other kind of chat sites where, for a fee, girls are willing to say what guys want to hear? Maybe not just that, but probably those guys who buy into that fantasy and then think all girls will go into that fantasy and they're trying to convince someone to do it for free? What do you think? Story 7. The nice guy I dated from Tinder was so annoying that I finally gave him a chance. We ended up dating for a year. He was really sensitive and sweet, unlike others I've met from Tinder. But what actually ended up happening were the following things. There's so much more, but those are just some highlights. Edit. Don't worry, I broke up with him after the last one happened. Second edit. Some of y'all honestly don't understand how hard it is to get out of abusive relationships. Third edit. For those of you saying something doesn't add up here because I have another post about my partner now, I mentioned in that post we broke up for a while. This was the guy I dated in between. Tinder is for hookups mainly anyway, and he was rebound. Fourth edit. I said the breadwinner stuff because I was sick of his blatant sexism and needed to put him in his absolute place. What the hell? I had so many questions, and you, my friend, have condensed them into a single concise one. You deity-damn wordsmith. Bravo. I think the spicy toy one was my favorite. Picture it. Original person is lying naked on the bed, tied up, of course, due to him doing BDSM to assert his masculinity. The guy is repeatedly penetrating her with a fat beige spicy toy, a super veiny fellow, while crying at his own inferiority. Original person is having multiple very bored orgasms, desperate for it to be over. Part of this post is missing, where she says, but what actually happened here were the following things, and we don't get them. Are we going to hear about this later in the video? I need to keep reading here. What are the things? We want to know. Details. Story 8. Yes, but the same problem in opposite direction. Dated a girl where we had been friends for a while. She shot me down in my teens, but we stayed friends. Talked all the time. Eventually, she decided to give us a shot. Cheated on me with a coworker after 6 months because I treated her as an equal, and she thought I'd treat her like a princess instead of my equal. Found out on Christmas Eve. Wow, that's awful. I'm glad you found out early, though, in the relationship. How are you doing now? Keeping on, keeping on. Most days are all right. Sometimes I miss my friend, but she was the last in a long line of girls to cheat on me, so I'm trying to sort through the trust issues before dumping them on someone new to avoid some of the heartbreak if I should find myself there again. Sometimes the love you have for them as a friend doesn't translate well to a relationship, no matter how well-intended you can be, especially if you rush into things based on the false confidence of, well, we've been friends for so long, they wouldn't do that to me. Thanks for asking. Props on the reflection and acknowledgement of the situation. You're on the right path, my friend. Story 9. I had a guy who would constantly ask me out or make really awkward advances for like a year plus. I finally hit a pretty low point after coming out of a relationship and agreed to go on a date. He seemed actually kind of nice, and we ended up dating and lived together for a bit. It all turned sour, though, when he realized that all his cute punk girl hogwash he had projected onto me wasn't who I am, and I wasn't changing to what he wanted me to be. And then all of a sudden he was out with friends constantly and coming home drunk. The morning he came home around 6 a.m., telling me he kissed another woman finally woke me up, and I left him. He would still send me messages for months after we broke up, not acknowledging my replies, saying I have a boyfriend and it's inappropriate to say these things. Even now, if I unblock him from social media, I'll get a message within a few days saying things like, "Hey, still beautiful, I see," or "Hey, cutie," or "Hey, sweetie," etc., and he gets blocked again. Ugh. How many times is this person unblocking this guy? I would think after maybe 2 attempts, depending. Just don't do it again. Just leave that switch off. Are you doing it just to get a laugh? No, just leave that block there. Leave it in place. No. Story 10. Yeah, I'm about done with people trying to get in my pants out of sheer desperation. I don't think this is quite the same thing as giving them a chance, because I'm already in a relationship and I'm not into anyone else. But I did put up with seriously creepy stuff both before I was in a relationship and after from this guy. He acted like unsolicited gifts were the way to work his way in, Even worse when I'm in a relationship already. Then had multiple unintelligible meltdowns if and when I so much as mention my boyfriend's name. I don't get it. All I do is treat people like people with respect, and it lands me a bunch of people who only care about themselves, who want nothing more than to drop their cruddy lives and poor decision-making skills on top of mine. Anyway, I'm taken, and my boyfriend is the best person in the world for me. Cursing hussy. All women are the same. Apparently, being a female equals leading someone on, so. Story 11. I wouldn't call myself a nice guy, but I'm a people pleaser to an unhealthy degree. My wife was the first to constantly call me out on my thoughtfulness that left her feeling overwhelmed constantly. She consistently informed me that I need to chill out and focus on myself, not on her, that she would be just fine and I can leave her alone. We're approaching 3 years married next month. Still have things to work on, but her ability to consistently and lovingly eventually tell me how my urge to please her was not pleasing to her was monumentally helpful. Took me a long time to understand it. And I thought I had strong self-awareness before I met her. If you think there's a glimmer of hope there, please do your best to lovingly tell that man-child he can chill out. It helped me to be asked if I had fears or thoughts about why I do those things, to challenge my notion of normal and let me self-reflect in it. Still took a while to get it. Ooh, this is an interesting perspective. Thanks for sharing. Story 12. My sister did. She's a hairstylist, and one of her clients was very aggressive about asking her out. He repeatedly bought flowers, concert tickets, and other gifts which he brought to her at work, and she said no each time because he seemed a little off. He got in a car accident and was really badly injured, and she felt sorry for him, so she went out with him finally. They dated a few months before breaking up. I don't know the exact reason why, but after that, he started stalking her. It's been over 5 years since then, and he's still keeping tabs on her. She's reported him to the police multiple times, has a restraining order, and has blocked him on Facebook/everywhere else. But every few months he finds a way to contact her. So if you get weird vibes from someone, don't give them a chance, or you might end up with a lifelong stalker like my sister has. Aggressively buying gifts and bringing to your workplace after saying no each time is not just a little off. Story 13. Yes, it worked out that he also felt entitled to other things and felt like no wasn't an acceptable answer for things like intimacy when he did so much for me. When they keep tally of all the things they did for you and bring it up when things don't go their way, curse that. Excuse me, since we've met, I've allowed you to take 525,600 breaths. Now you may be thinking, actually, I did that all on my own, but my darling, dear, small-minded girl who I know that I want to and will marry, I could have unalived you when we first met, which means you owe them to me. And in return, you will listen. At 12 breaths per minute, that's about 30 and a half days of breathing, in case anyone's interested. Story 14. Way too many times in college. I had guys in the friendzone who I decided to give a chance because I was stupid and felt sorry for them. The last straw was when a guy took me shopping. I said yes in lonely desperation on a Friday night. This was a Saturday afternoon. At every store I went into, he would either criticize me for not wanting him to buy me anything, I'm not much of a shopper anyways, or ask me for intimacy because he bought me a used video game I wanted. Never again. There's a good reason incels are incels. But I blinked for you. Get naked? Oh, so you said no? I never liked you anyway. You're such a hussy. Have you been going through my inbox? Story 15. Yes, I did once, and I wish I didn't. He wasn't a nice guy after all. He treated me like I was the ugly one. I never felt more awful in my whole life than when I was with him. I should have known. Lesson learned, and you're better off. Yes, this. He stopped any form of compliments or encouragement, and I found myself desperately trying to seek his approval. My own issues, definitely. Can't blame him for having them. but he seemed to take pleasure in withholding affection from me and using insults, put-downs, and backhanded compliments to keep me in a cycle of walking on eggshells. Story 16. Yes, the tantrums continued throughout the relationship. He was very controlling. If I was out with friends, he would be upset that I was having fun without him. He ended up cheating on me and dumping me only to beg me back. He semi-staked me for a couple of years, had an online blog about what I did each day, and tried to befriend my exes. That sounds awful. I'm glad you shook him eventually, but deity. What a power-trippin' freakazoid. Right? Even used a deity-damned stake on her like she was some kind of vampire. Holy hell, that's terrifying. Hope you're safe and non-stalked now. Story 17. I don't get it. Being treated like a queen means that you get a plot of land and subjects, right? These guys seem to do the opposite, right? Like, show me the deed or get the hell out. Exactly. Actions speak louder than words. Get a man who's open about his feelings and can mobilize an entire army to claim the farmland to the north. Story 18. Pro tip. If he or she throws a tantrum, they're not a nice guy, girl, or person. They are a manipulative jerkwad that needs to be avoided or blocked. You all deserve better than that. Story 19. It started off great, but after a few months it turned sour. To tell a long story short, there was horrible manipulation and abuse. Seriously, girls, if you meet a guy like this, run.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.